Hello, everybody. I hope you can all hear me and that technology has brought us all together. Welcome to the Royal Television Society panel to discuss the winners, losers and own goals, live sport in lockdown. I'm Reshmin Chowdhury, delighted to host you all today, and I've got a great panel as well. I think we all know that COVID-19 has presented an unprecedented challenge for all of us. I don't think I know a single person who hasn't been in some way affected mentally and in some ways from what we've all been through. But of course, when you're a sports broadcaster and your entire schedule is completely dashed at the last minute, that's arguably the toughest pivot to make and something you have to think about very, very quickly as well. We'll be hearing today from major sporting brands across the UK to find out what their initial response was to this global pause on live sport and also the longer term approach as well. The panel will be discussing innovative ways that broadcasters have been dealing with the challenging circumstances and the value of new and existing technologies to sort of aid this new normal that we're in. And also we'll be taking a little flavour of what to expect going forward as well. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our panel to you. First of all, Rob Webster, the Managing Director of Sky Sports, which means he oversees the direction of all sport across the Sky platform and Sky Sports News as well. Simon Green, the head of BT Sport. So of course, Simon was dealing with multiple sports in the Premier League, but also the return of the European football as well, which was very uncertain at one point. And also Sylvia Di Gregorio, she's the UK Sports Innovation Lead at NTT Data UK, and someone who I'm sure has become very good friends with the broadcasters in recent times, more than usual. So first of all, I'm going to start by asking the panel, really sort of, and taking you back to that Thursday night or the Thursday day actually, when the Premier League in March confirmed that all live sport would continue in the UK. There was no UK lockdown at that time. And just hours later, the Arsenal manager, Mikel Arteta, was confirmed as a positive case. It was confirmed that he did, in fact, have COVID-19. And that really changed the entire landscape of what would be broadcast on live TV. You had people in place who were going to go to live sporting events, and that could not happen anymore. And it was a real sort of pivotal moment. So I'm going to start with you, Rob, from Sky. What was your initial response when that happened?
Blimey, where to start? So thank you for the intro, and it's lovely to be here. So I took on the role of MD of Sky Sports about 16 months ago. So my first reaction, to be honest, Reshmin, was that's not a great career move. There's going to be no live sport. No, seriously, it was a moment that had been coming and building, I think. And Sky Sports UK is part of a much bigger organisation, as you probably know, in Europe. And our Italian colleagues were kind of ahead of us in terms of where Italy was tracking with the virus and in terms of their sport. So I think it was only a matter of time. And actually, we'd also had the Melbourne Grand Prix cancelled at pretty much zero notice. Crowds had started to appear and gather at the track at Melbourne, and then the race was cancelled. So I think we kind of knew at that point that football was next, and that sport was just going to be called off. So look, we had done as much planning as we possibly could. We'd spoken to our Italian colleagues at great length about how they had reacted in that moment, and I don't think anyone could be fully prepared for that moment and that realization that you have 11 sports channels which are dedicated to live sport, and there wasn't going to be any live sport for a period of time. So it was a calm reaction because we'd prepped as much as we could, and then from that moment on, it was really all about what we do about it and how you kind of mobilize to react to that news. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely imagine, and you had the benefit of the Italian sort of arm of Sky Sports as well, I imagine. And Simon, with regards to BT, I mean, we spoke about it just off camera a few moments ago that, I mean, I was supposed to go to a European game in Napoli in the south of Italy, and that was cancelled. So there was also sort of hints within sort of everything going on and everything around your own programming at BT that this could happen. But in terms of preparation, how far had you prepared, and could you have prepared for this moment?
Well, Sid, thank you for the intro and so on, and it's great to be here as well. We hadn't prepared properly. We couldn't prepare properly because we didn't really understand exactly what we were going to be faced with. As Rob says, it's a very similar story for us and other broadcasters. But it was a wow moment when suddenly we were faced with the prospect of there being no Premier League in 2 days' time, and having to redo all of the schedules. So I suppose the first thing that came to mind was, or three things I think came to mind. First was how we're going to redo our schedule, how we're going to communicate and understand and get the latest news on all the various sports strands that we deal with, how we're going to get information back to us as quickly as we can, and then permeate that information back out to all of our various partners. That was, is that me? I'm sorry.
Simon, that's the first rule.
The beauty of being live.
Where was I?
Have we got you back?
The first thing was the schedule. I apologise about that. The first thing was the schedule. The second thing I think we thought about was what are our customers going to be thinking? And that became a problem for us over the next 2 or 3 weeks, where we had to deal with that issue of communicating to customers and offering them what we felt was the right thing back. And then the third thing, I think, was how long is this going to last? And I don't think at that point we anticipated it lasting in the way that it has. I think we anticipated a much shorter problem than it turned out to be. But those first three initial thoughts came to us, as well as it was a wow moment for us. That suddenly we were in a different world and were having to react to changing circumstances by the hour. Like you said, on the Thursday afternoon, we thought we were going to be showing a Premier League match on a Saturday lunchtime. By Thursday evening, that was changed.
So how was that whole period? Because when, as you know, I said, you speak to people at the various football clubs, they did not know what they were dealing with. The Premier League did not know what it was dealing with. No one, it was a case of just the unknown. And I imagine that you can only plan so far before all your plans get completely dashed because the situation has changed. So what was that period of uncertainty like in terms of managing the expectations, you say, of the customers, but managing internal expectations of staff, of people you might have had to furlough, of freelancers who had jobs booked and suddenly they're left with absolutely nothing? It's a people's job at the end of the day, and that's a huge challenge, I imagine, for people like yourself, Simon.
Well, for us at BT Sport, it meant some fairly intense and quick decision making that was going on throughout the following day and the following weeks, where we had to communicate very quickly to a large numbers of groups of stakeholders that were involved with BT Sport, our partners, when it comes to actually producing content. So we have production partners who we were needing to communicate. They had freelancers and so on. We had our talent, our on-screen talent, who we had to keep informed about what was going on, our own staff, and then obviously providing as much information as we could back to call centres, because call centres were being inundated at the very time that the nation was taking on this huge issue of COVID and people being ill, and various people throughout the nation falling ill, and death rates rising around the world. It was becoming increasingly more and more of a situation that was being faced by the world. But to keep our stakeholders on side as best we could, we had to open up quick lines of communication that allowed us to actually inform people where we were going or what changes would be made very, very fast. So that was the thing that we had to quickly do, as well as start to look at what we were going to do to fill the schedule. So we lost all that live sport. We realised we still got an awful lot of acreage of time to fill across various networks, and therefore a lot of meetings very, very quickly were organised to try and fix what we were going to put into the schedule and when we could get it ready to go to air.
And Rob, I imagine it's the same for you with 11 channels of live sport to fill on across the Sky network. How did you manage that?
I mean, Simon's just I think captured it perfectly, which is that it was speed of decision making and the importance of communication. So speed of decision making for us, again, many stakeholders. Top of the list were our customers. So we made a decision pretty much on day one of this to allow our customers to pause paying us. So with no live sport, our pubs and clubs business, we proactively stopped taking money from pubs and clubs, and we allowed our residential customers to pause subscription. So we made swift decision making in terms of the immediate customer impact. We then made a very quick decision that we were going to keep all our sports channels on air. You know, one conversation is, do you just take the channels off air for a period of time? We made the decision to keep them all on air, and in particular Sky Sports News, which of course is our channel for rolling information about sport, news about sport. So as sport was being cancelled, Sky Sports News we felt was a very, very important vehicle to keep telling that story. But we made a swift decision that we needed to minimize how many people were coming on site every day, because the building that we operate out of houses Sky Sports News, but also Sky News. Yeah. So we made a very swift decision really to wrap Sky Studios, the building, up in sort of bubble wrap and make sure that was really secure. And then as with Simon, I think we did two other key things. We made sure the lines of communication between us and the governing bodies, from the Premier League to F1 to the ECB, you name it, was crystal clear and regular. So conversations were pretty much hourly. And we made sure that communication to all our staff was as clear, frequent, and rapid as possible. And then literally it mobilized, as I said earlier, slightly more to, okay, we've got these 11 channels. There's no live sport. What are we going to put on them that keeps the customers engaged and keeps the channels full? And how are we going to use technology to help us with that? So we kind of started stepping into that process very quickly to make sure that the channels sort of remained as exciting as they could possibly be in the absence of live sport. So there were multiple kind of work streams, but the importance really within all of that of clear communication and decision making. And I'm not going to claim we got them all right either, but it was the need to move fast and to make sure we were just really clear in where the priorities were and to step into those as quickly as we could.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring in Sylvia here because we haven't heard from you yet, Sylvia.
Hi, Yasmin.
Hi there. I imagine you made a lot of new best friends across the broadcasters very, very quickly indeed, especially
Exactly. Correct. So, well, as entity group, we are involved in many different sport events, live events around the globe. So there is the Tour de France, there is the championship, the Open Championship, the golf tournament, there is the IndyCar motor races with the famous Indy 500 held in Minneapolis. We normally start planning for those events a year ahead. So imagine what everything looked like for us when, and I guess the biggest challenge for us, back to your previous question, was actually understanding how to help our partners, our clients, the new friends that we made to overcome the challenge and to quickly adjust the plans, quickly adjust the technologies, deploy those technologies for different use cases. And we didn't know whether the events would be cancelled, just postponed with no spectators. So it was a tough time, decisions needed to happen quickly. And so we adapted as everyone else did.
Yeah, and from your side then, what were the initial first conversations about? You know, when a broadcaster contacts you, they've got this event coming up, live event. when they pick up the phone to you and say, Sylvia, help, what is the first thing that they're asking you? What are they talking to you about?
Well, obviously the challenge was around the fans experience. So they wanted, we all wanted to keep that fans experience alive, richer than ever, actually, because of the circumstances. So we needed to come out with use cases around one of the biggest example is the Open for the Ages, right? So a completely virtual game that we put live with Sky this year around past great golfers playing as if the game was being played nowadays. So different concepts that just to keep the atmosphere alive and make sure the fans continued to be engaged. Obviously, something like the Opens for the Ages was possible only thanks to the technologies that we have nowadays. So this was the way we helped our partners and our clients.
And did you also have difficult conversations with your staff, or was it a case that you needed more people to be able to implement what the broadcasters were asking for?
Well, no, absolutely. We are a very large business organization, and obviously we were impacted as any other company in the world. Just to give you an example, something that would normally happen on the roadside for the Tour de France, this year happened all virtually. So we had 70 people across 5 different continents working together on what we call our virtual technical room, because for the Tour de France, we are involved into, again, making the fans experience richer, because it's everything that matters. So we provide advanced analytics, advanced KPIs around the cyclist performances, around the team strategies, and all of that, all the technologies behind that was run remotely by 70 people across the world. So of course, difficult conversations need to happen with our staff as well. But as all the other industries, we managed to go through that, and we understood the potentialities of working all remotely, right?
Yeah.
And virtually. So 2 years of digital transformation have been gone through, as the CEO of Microsoft said. And the sport industry, is exactly the same as any other industry.
Yeah, I mean, remote production is something, Simon, particularly with BT. I know we do it with the women's football. I work remotely with across the women's football on the BBC as well, and it works. It's been happening. You know, I think that's been going on for about a couple of seasons in terms of cutting costs. When it comes to, I mean, I don't want to put it in these terms necessarily, but when it comes to a bigger show like the Premier League, how does that work when suddenly, where you might have, I don't know, how many people would you have on site for a Premier League match? 100, maybe more? How does it work? Suddenly that gets all taken away, Simon.
Well, obviously, it is something that was already being worked on. As you said, you've been working on remote production for quite a while now, but it's certainly something that the industry was moving towards, and all the broadcasters, Rob will tell a similar story about how remote production was something that has been experimented with, as well as becoming a real thing over the last 2 or 3 years. We had already begun the process of moving to as much remote production as we could, where we had to bring our partners, our rights holders on side very quickly, is say for the Champions League, UEFA or the Premier League, were not familiar with their content, which is worth millions and millions of pounds being fed all around the world, that we are responsible for producing, perhaps being produced using new technology that hadn't been tried properly. And we went from a very cautious position with remote production at the beginning of this year to now having established it with our rights partners like UEFA and the Premier League in a very, very quick space of time. And it isn't done just on the basis of saving money. Remote production is a lot about sustainability as well. So we think, and you know, we haven't proved this yet, but we think that we're reducing our carbon footprint, for example, by going to remote production. And we're very pleased that the industry and all of the broadcasters now are looking at remote production in a way that we never were at the beginning of the year. For me personally, I was a little bit skeptical and very cautious about having major content be put to wear in a remote way. But I've been proved wrong by some incredibly hard-working and talented people who technically have set up remote production in a way that I never thought I would see happen over the next 3 or 4 years. It's all happened within 6 months.
How hard was it to set up? Because I know that you've had your director working from home, your producer working from home, all in different locations across the country. What did you require to set up this process and to actually make it happen?
Well, confidence. That's the thing that we had to, first of all, establish amongst the people that were going to be involved, and confidence in that connectivity. There were latency issues. There's sound issues alongside latency when you're asking people to commentate football matches that are coming in from live from Germany from home.
Yeah.
Little things like that that have to be fixed. But it is a matter of demonstrating to people that this technology does work. It's very similar to the work that you have been doing in the past when you've been turning up to live outside broadcasts. It's just that you are sitting in a different part of the country to somebody else. Obviously, our technology partners, they were who had already been involved in the process of building remote production, were keen to see it pushed on as much as possible. But telling that sustainability story is a very easy one to get people to come on side and buy into the new ways of working. Very easy. Yeah,
no, I can imagine. And for Rob, for yourself, I mean, I guess with the amount of Premier League matches that Sky have, you know, across the hours, you know, you'd start at, I can't even remember the start times now, it feels like quite a while ago, maybe 1 at 5, 1 at 7, 1 at, you know, it was such a massive production. How did you manage those sort of crazy few weeks after the Premier League restart?
Yeah. I mean, I hope this doesn't disappoint too many people listening in, but you're going to find Sky and BT agreeing an awful lot.
Yeah.
You're on the same platform here.
Well, everything that Simon has just articulated, I would echo. You know, we've been on a path towards increasing remote production for a few years. We've been doing the Football League games pre-COVID remotely as well. So we're very set up in Sky Studios now for remote production. And again, a very similar experience just to see the enthusiasm and the confidence with which everybody stepped into that in these crazy times was really inspiring actually to see. Yeah, no, look, when sport returned, when football returned, we obviously were looking at a very condensed season, remainder of the season. The games were crammed in. There was almost a game every day. We'd worked with BT and with the Premier League to make more games available. So you'll have seen a whole bunch of games on free to air. So there was a very good collaboration. Maybe we can come back to that between us and the governing bodies. But in the end, when football returned, we ended up producing or broadcasting over 100 games in 6 weeks. So the pace of production was like we've never experienced before. You normally do about 100 games in about half a season.
Right.
And it was 6 weeks of work. So we had time to prepare because of the time when sport wasn't around and laid off. But nonetheless, it was a very intense period of time when remote production was our friend. I mean, our best friend. And it was really important that everybody stepped into that. And the really important thing with remote production is that the viewer doesn't know. The viewer doesn't really know that you're producing remotely. You still have teams on site. It's not as though nobody's there, but actually a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the production is done remotely. So customers don't notice a difference or don't really know for the most part. So yeah, no, look, it's been one of the sort of success stories, if you can call it that, about this period of time. And I would echo the importance for remote production in the sustainability story. You know, like BT Sport, very, very focused on being an incredibly sustainable, responsible sports broadcaster, and remote production helps you with that, going down that path. Fewer trucks on the road, fewer people, etc., at venues. So that only helps. So I would just echo the experience that Simon's had, how connectivity was important, and how jumping in with both feet to a set of circumstances that none of us have been confronted before was an inspiring process, and ongoing, right? It's ongoing. Was
it nerve-wracking in a way, as the MD of Sky Sports, to know that you had this big challenge ahead? Were there parts of you where you thought, God, I really, or would you go home privately and speak to everyone at home and say, God, I really hope it works?
There's no way I can sit here and say it was all plain sailing and there weren't moments of your heart's in your mouth, when there weren't moments where things didn't go wrong. So yeah, 100%, absolutely, because it was I'm talking in the past tense, but we're still in it really. It was a period of time where many work streams were happening. We were talking a lot to the governing bodies about the impact on sport generally and their sport, and making sure that the conversations there were multi-layered. We were taking a big hit to our business by the customer decisions we'd taken, so we needed to have commercial conversations, but the conversations needed to be taking part in a way where the best interests of sport was the most important outcome. There was all those conversations happening over here from a kind of relationship and commercial standpoint, but over here, the sort of bulk of the activity was how we produce our content and how we're going to react on screen. And we did, the use of technology was central to that, remote production, but actually how we reinvented and reinvigorated archive content was really key to how we thought about things as well. If you're rerunning classic matches in your schedule, and that's really all you can do for a period of time, you've got to make that as exciting and compelling and fresh as possible. And we use technology in quite novel ways to help us tell those stories, which I'm happy to come back to, but I'm conscious of passing to Sylvia. But we've done a lot of, we've used technology in many different ways to just try and keep the channels as interesting as possible before live sport.
Yeah, because I also am conscious, because I wanted to ask Sylvia about sort of the remote production things, but could you elaborate on that? How do you, because I wouldn't know how you, what technologies what do you mean when you say you have to use new technologies to bring it, because you're playing old matches, so what do you do differently to make the viewer experience different? Then what did you change?
One of the biggest things we did, again, before live sport returned, was we introduced a concept called watch-alongs, which took the form of rerunning a classic sporting event. So the Cricket World Cup final from last year, incredible event in its own right. Absolutely. We managed to get Ben Stokes and Owen Morgan and Joss Butler on screens like this, talking through and playing out the final and talking through what was happening in that moment. So you were watching along with the protagonists of the piece. So you had Stokes talking about, I needed to accelerate the run rate at this point, and he was sitting on a screen like this. So we used a technology called vMix to achieve that. And people who are far cleverer than I know how vMix works. I won't pretend to know the ins and outs, but it was that concept. And we then applied that to reruns of football matches, reruns of Ryder Cup classics, just so that you could hear from the people involved in the moment what was happening. And that was a big success, and it involved getting people to be set up at home with the right technology to be able to seamlessly have the VT of the event itself being shown and people with earpieces in watching along and talking the viewer through it. So that's an example, and that was really popular with our customers.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine, because I suppose it's anything that's innovative at a time when people are in difficult moments. You want to bring the feel-good factor back, and you want to bring make them feel part of it. And Sylvia, I mean, going back to, as we've been saying, we've been talking about remote production as well. What are the demands then on NTT when the demand for remote production suddenly goes from about here to about there?
So for us, more than supporting partners and clients with the remote production, was the challenge was around augmenting what the live broadcasting would have brought to the fans. So it was a slightly different challenge because we are not directly involved in remote production.
Right.
But when it comes to an event that gets postponed or an event that gets cancelled, it's about finding different ways to enhance their experience anyway. And in our case was even for us about understanding new use cases for the technologies that we have available now, right? Even something that we hadn't had the chance to explore before. So back to the running the past sport events and understanding how they were playing out, for us was about ingesting huge amount of data, analyzing the data, identifying each event, each single event at each big sport event to be able to then come out with a concept like the Open for the Ages, right? So analytics, all the area regarding understanding the data, the possibilities that those numbers and those figures bring, but also artificial intelligence. Without artificial intelligence models, it's impossible. It would take a huge amount of manual work to go through something like that, to go through all this archive, all this information from the past years, more than 50 years for the Open, and derive something that it's appealing for the viewers and for the fans. Even, when it came to determining the winner for the game, for our virtual game, it was all based on artificial intelligence and predictions by using historical data. And obviously the fans at home had the chance to vote as well to determine the winner, but it was a combination of technology and human feedback to make the experience great despite all the challenges. So a slightly different situation compared to the remote production, but again, it was about augmenting that production anyway with alternative solutions.
And in terms of finding those solutions and then taking that forward, do you think that you've sort of innovated the way that if, we don't know how, of course, at the moment, but is that sort of method, is that sort of a blueprint going forward now because you've enhanced the fan experience? You can't now take that away. So is that going forward what you'll be doing?
Absolutely. We believe that the two things will go hand in hand. I think it's the English word. In English expression. Thanks.
Yes.
We all hope that the fans will be able to get back to the stadiums as soon as possible. But we can't deny that technology has advanced massively over the past months and throughout this huge challenge. And it will continue playing a key role, which is good because we shouldn't forget the final goal, the final objective, which is all about the fans experience at the end of the day. So yes, and we've been playing with that for some time now. Up until last year, so 2019, we anyway provided, for example, the Open with some very cool technologies. We installed what we call the wall to provide the viewers present in the physical location with some trends, some key statistics, and all the information augmented the live broadcast on the wall. So it was something that we had already started exploring and bringing to our partners and the fans. It's now just being accelerated and applied to other use cases. Hence, it will absolutely be taken forward even in better times.
Yeah, we hope for those better times, don't we? Simon, in terms of that fan experience, something that was sort of touted before was whether to have the crowd noise. I've forgotten the term there. The crowd noise or no crowd noise. In the end, everyone opted for crowd noise. I mean, when La Liga was relaunched and the Bundesliga were relaunched, they sort of took those approaches. What made you decide either way for BT to go with the crowd noise? What did it hinge on, the decision?
I'll let you into a secret. We just watched what was going on in Germany.
Yeah.
So they were ahead of us. And we knew that German football was coming back to us, and we were going to have this opportunity to offer crowd noise or not.
Oh, have we lost Simon?
Lost Simon. Do you want me to pick that up until he comes
Is he back? We can wait till he comes. We'll give it a few seconds. No? Just as he told us the secret as well.
Did you lose me there?
Yes.
You're back.
You can't tell us a secret and disappear. Like that?
Apologies. Yeah, you all froze then. We watched what happened in Germany, so that was a secret for us. And there was a debate that went on, and I was the last one to be convinced that we should make crowd noise the default, and then allow our viewers to opt out of crowd noise, which is what we ended up doing. So our viewers have the opportunity to opt out of crowd noise. And crowd noise, and it took me about 10 minutes of watching the first Premier League match to be convinced that yes, crowd noise was the right thing to offer. And if you were sensitive about what crowd noise you were actually providing, so make it as much as you can team specific and so on, then it works very well, and has done ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, where do you stand on that? Because as I was discussing before, I work on radio as well, and I've been in the stadiums, and it is very strange when there is no crowd noise. You can hear a pin drop. Everyone who's broadcasting, your voices are heard around the stadium. You can hear everything on the pitch. What was your experience like of that?
It's a very surreal experience, isn't it? Again, similar to Simon, the Sky Group thing with Germany. So Sky Germany, the Bundesliga returned before, so we had the benefit of the learnings from our German colleagues, and we were very involved on a bi-weekly basis, actually twice a week rather, to have conversations with Italy and Germany about what's happening in your territory, how are you thinking about things, and what are you going to do. So we were involved in the crowd noise discussions for the Bundesliga. So it was a natural extension of that we would introduce crowd noise. We made it a choice, so you can watch it on one channel with no crowd noise or on another channel with crowd noise. Some interesting stat, I think, is that 75 to 80% of our customers watch it with. There's still some people who watch without, but the vast majority do watch it with the crowd noise. And I mean, personally, I think it has augmented and benefited the experience massively. I mean, we were saying off camera beforehand, I went to, I've been to one event since this has happened, just to see our own team. I went to Old Trafford for the England-West Indies test match for half a day to sort of see our team, and watching test match cricket with no one in the stands and no noise is a surreal experience, as it is with football and every other sport. Stuart Broad took his 500th test wicket, which is a major event in any sports man or woman's life. And, it's just an odd place to be. So adding in that crowd noise really does give the viewer something more in terms of an experience to enjoy the match and to enjoy the sporting event. So I was a huge fan of it from when our German colleagues introduced it, and I remain a huge fan of it, actually. Simon's right. I think the more variations you can use and where you can tailor that crowd noise to the club that you're watching, the team that you're watching, helps the experience. And we've now got 8 people operating crowd noise, and I'm becoming expert in how that works, literally turning it up and turning it down depending on the action of the pitch. So yeah, I think it's been a big way of mitigating what we all know, which is that sport needs crowds to really have that natural atmosphere. You need crowds. We're desperate for crowds to return, but until that happens, crowd noise artificially does help massively. Yeah.
So are those 8 people in control of the chants that are being played out and all of that? It's all according to producers in the sense that they're sort of directing and producing.
They're like DJs with big
story.
decks to figure out stuff. Yeah, no, it's very impressive to watch.
Who knew, hey? Who knew? Everyone's learning something in lockdown. I've got to ask you, and Simon, I'll ask you first. Obviously, it's been a very heightened period for everybody. It's been difficult in many ways, but there's something that did come out of it, and that was the Black Lives Matter movement, which very much played into sport as well. Well, I'll ask you, Rob, you're just right there in front of me, so I'll ask you first, but why was it important for the sports industry, do you think, to embrace that?
I mean, it's super important. It's not a choice. I think sport is so visible. Sport is such a big part of our culture and our livelihoods that it's not a choice. It has to happen. We have to use our voice in sport to help move the conversation along and to help change attitudes and to do what we possibly can to play a really active role in that. And I think that the Black Lives Matter movement and the events that triggered that during this recent period were so impactful and felt by so many people that it just brought a sharper focus on what we already knew, which was that sport needs to evolve and sport needs to play a bigger role in tackling these issues, and broadcasters within that have to play a bigger role in using our voice and lending our voice towards the conversation and moving the dial forward in the right direction. So it kind of just brought into much sharper focus the role that we have to play. And I think we've accelerated what we are doing on screen massively. I mean, I can cite many, many examples. We've had Michael Holding and Ebony Rainford-Brent talking very powerfully about
very powerful,
their own experiences. There's obviously making sure that we have a very diverse on-screen team and off-screen team. But we've got a long way to go. We're telling the stories. We've set up content groups within Sky Sports, diverse content groups to look for the stories to tell. We told a story about the origins of Swing Low Sweet Chariot, the England rugby anthem. And everyone goes to Twickenham and sings it, but actually very few people, I think, when they're singing it, think about its origins and what it means. So we told the story and we did a show on that about the origins. So we have stepped into telling more of the stories and using our voice more. And it's not a choice. It's just something we need to do and should be doing more of. And I think the more that we can all do and pull together in the same direction, working with Kick It Out, working with the governing bodies, everyone involved in sport, we've just got a shared responsibility, I think, to do everything that we can to eradicate racism and division within sport. We can't solve for everything, but we can hurl ourselves at doing our bit, and we've been very focused on that amidst everything else that's been going on.
No, absolutely, and it's definitely been very, very successful. I think it definitely got people's attention as well, and rightly so. So looking ahead to, or just thinking about sort of the recent announcements, then I'm going to ask you, Simon, this. Boris Johnson has said that we're at this pivotal point, and none of us knows what this could mean for sports. So Simon, at BT, does that mean everyone is a little bit more prepared that things could change again? Like how do sort of the recent announcements change what you might be thinking and planning going forward?
Nothing immediately changes. We believe, a very, very agile business now, and our ability to change to circumstances now compared to how I thought we were back in February, March time is very different. So we see ourselves as an extremely agile business that is able to react to circumstances as they change. But the recent announcement this week was a disappointing one. Rob's already mentioned crowds being at events is a part of sport.
We know that
we all desperately miss. And there being no crowds at the sporting events that we are broadcasting, it lowers the kind of entertainment value, because crowds play a part in a sporting event. But we are ready to react to any changes as they happen now. But the financial consequences that are now being lived through by many sporting organisations, particularly clubs and so on, are going to be long felt. Those are the real problems that are going to be. Once let's hope that COVID is past us in a year's time, and we are back to some sense of normality in terms of how we can operate as a broadcaster and how the world is able to get together again and go to sporting events. But I think the financial consequences for many sporting organisations and smaller clubs and so on will be profound, and it will be affected. And that's the thing that I now think will become the attention for the sporting industry, and hopefully for government and everybody to rally around and ensure that we can, as best as possible, rebuild that sporting kind of ecosystem back up as soon as possible. But I know that's what I've just summarised there is the same for so many different industries. So it's not just that our industry or sport, broadcasting, media and so on. There are multiple different industries that have been affected by this period that we've all been through. But I think the long-term consequences for sport are going to be felt, unfortunately, with those that haven't had the resources in the past. So it's going to be a difficult time going forward.
It is. I'm going to ask you something that I should have asked you before, but I'm going to swing it around for the future as well in terms of the European football, because obviously we had Club 2020, we had the European football coming back. At one point, it didn't seem like it was going to be possible. We had Champions League football and Europa League football broadcast very, very successfully. Going forward, sort of tell me a little bit about that experience and how strange it was, I guess, because you're dealing with UEFA, you're dealing with all different countries, you're dealing with this mixing of so many different people. Of course, you know, you get bubbles and the like, but you can never know where anyone has been. So that was obviously a big challenge. So how was that experience, and what do you think going forward now that things have sort of possibly changed or might be changing going future? How do you prepare for European football and those schedules going forward? Sorry.
Well, I suppose there's various aspects to that. I mean, those tournaments coming back in August were fabulous for us, because being able to broadcast the Europa League and the Champions League in the way that we were able to, and it was a new type of tournament in that they were happening in single destinations. We were extremely concerned about particularly Portugal, what was happening in Portugal leading up to UEFA running the Champions League from that particular location, because of the incidence of COVID in that country. Germany was a little bit more secure with Europa League. Going forward, we are concerned about clubs being able to travel from one country to another where there are differing rates of COVID, and how that is going to be played out over the next 2 or 3 months during the group stages of both those competitions will be interesting. And obviously we've got to be ready to react to any changes, but we are definitely going to be sending fewer people to international destinations. That is going to change. I think that will also be something that we'll probably look at changing for the long term. And I think for UEFA, they will be looking at how those tournaments were concluded, and if there is further disruption to the season, whether or not they may have to go back to concluding competitions such as the Champions League or the Europa League in a similar way to how they were concluded last season. So that's one thing that they will have to ready to react to. And we, as a broadcaster, clearly through the experience that we've had, we're ready for all of that.
And how does that, Rob, I'm going to ask you, in terms of sort of going forward and sending fewer staff to events, which you've been doing already, is that now something that you'll see as somewhat of a blueprint going forward, that there is a more economical way of doing live sport?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there still is going to be a need to send, meaningfully big teams to various events, of course. But again, it almost comes back to the sort of remote production argument or discussion we had earlier of how we use remote. And I think going forward, yes is the answer. I mean, an example for us would be Formula One. So Formula One is a sport which literally travels the world, and you know, we have to stay in very close contact with F1 to know where, if and when Grand Prix are going to happen, say in China, the Chinese Grand Prix, or you know, you name it, Abu Dhabi. So regular dialogue there, and actually when we have answers to that, questions will arise: how many people we send to those events? You know, do you arguably take a world feed and not necessarily send a huge team out there? So we will, sport by sport, event by event, make decisions based on sort of the new way of working. And actually, you know, things will go wrong in the weeks and months ahead. It's live TV, and things don't go quite right. But I totally agree with Simon again that we're broadly in a pattern now of being able to work in the way that we're working. We've kind of got a regular beat of how we're producing content. There's always going to be curveballs about international travel and what happens next. So we've got a sort of rhythm going forward, desperate for crowds as we all are. It's more for us, you know, as Simon touched on, the long-term health of sport is something which is a real concern to governing bodies, clearly, to clubs, to the sporting pyramid. You know, there's a reason traditionally the 3 p.m. kickoffs, as everybody will know, were sacrosanct, and they weren't allowed to be broadcast on air, because the whole reason behind that is to protect the lower league clubs. If Man City are playing Man United at 3 o'clock and BT or Sky are showing it, someone who would otherwise go to their local ground to watch their local team might stay in and watch the United City game. So they were protected, but you know, we've opened those up a bit to make sure that people can experience as much as they can. EFL games, clubs can now live stream all of their matches to help mitigate the lost gate revenue. So we're working with governing bodies really to just try and safeguard the financial health of sports as much as we possibly can, knowing that each individual sport has got real bumps in the road ahead, and it's not easy. But we've got a rhythm of working at Sky Sports now that's found its beat. And as I say, there will be curveballs, but we're sort of broadly comfortable with the way that we're getting information out of governing bodies, the way we're responding to that information, and the sort of decision-making trees that we've got in place to sort of react accordingly. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, Reshmin, but that's sort of how we're thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Sylvia, what, you know, going forward, what are you, or can I just say to anybody watching that please feel free to type in your questions on the chat or send in I mean, I'm not a technology person, so I don't know how you're going to do it, but there is a facility for you to ask questions, and it would be great to get them into our panel today. I just wanted to get that out there. And Sylvia, while people are sort of typing away, I hope, I just wanted to ask, in terms of NTT, what is your relationship with your clients going forward then? How does that change in terms of what we're facing in the coming, well, in the foreseeable future, let's say?
I guess, Rashmi, the truth is that we'll continue doing what we've always done, advising the partners, the clients on the art of the possible for technology to support whatever decision is made by the authorities. If it's still to continue be without the crowds, without the spectators, we'll continue on that path of using technology to enhance the experience remotely, the virtual experience. If we are finally allowed to bring people back into the location, the physical locations, we're going to explore with our partners, with the clients, a wide range of solutions that we call smart solutions that could help safeguarding the staff of the broadcasters, the fans back into the locations, and just to mention a few, intelligent capabilities to do, you know, the seating in the locations, indoor systems, navigations to ensure social distancing, the way people would enjoy the experience of a physical location, of an arena, of a stadium. That will change, and it can be supported by the new technologies to just make things safer for everyone. So again, we'll continue to do what we've always done, advising and supporting, considered obviously the external circumstances. The technology is ready, it's just a matter of understanding which use cases are to be brought alive.
Okay. No, fantastic. I'm just going to go to a couple. Thank you very much, Sylvia. Just very quickly, Sylvia. So are you developing new technologies as we speak to kind of enhance this experience, or do you have the technologies in place to already do that? Is this kind of a fast moving industry already?
It is. So we are, in general, the focus now is on for the broadcasting industry is on video AI and how we could personalize the experience to the viewers even more. Thanks to the AI algorithms, and this is something that we are developing and we are exploring as we speak, basically, because it's a very fast-paced environment. Things are changing and evolving all the time. So AI is something we need to keep up with, and there is no end point. It's a continuous learning and a continuous evolution. So definitely, yes, we are exploring new models and new technologies as we speak.
Cool. Yeah, and I imagine they will keep evolving as we go along. We do have some questions. I'm going to start with Sid Coley. Hi, Sid. I know Sid. One of your question is, how do you see the role of 5G, for example, and AI augmenting the user experience? This is for Simon and Rob. How will the lower latency of 5G impact remote production and perhaps also immersive AR experiences? Who would like to start that? Simon first?
Yeah, okay. Well, we've already used 5G for remote production. We already used the technology to save on otherwise more expensive connectivity. So 5G is a technology that we've already managed to use. As far as the user is concerned, how those new products and services evolve in the market over the next few years, because people have got so much better connectivity to devices. It's in the hands of the inventors of some fantastic new toys that can be invented that will supplement live sport. I'm sure there's lots of experiences that you may have seen demonstrated, where you can sit in a crowd and look around and also see a game being played out in front of you. Because of that faster connectivity, the technology will evolve over time. It will be quite exciting though, but 5G is definitely going to impact both the customer experience and how we produce what we produce.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Simon. There's a question from Tim Marshall. He's saying that some certain stadia, for example, Brighton, are increasingly looking at having permanent automated rigs with AI directing the game. Is this the next step down the road, and how does that impact the business model? He's asking, could I not just buy the content directly OTT from the rights holder? Rob?
Gosh, there's a few bits in there. I think so. Buying the content directly from the rights holder is it's a complex matrix of how the whole rights market operates, and obviously there are contracts in place between us and the governing bodies, between BT Sport and the various governing bodies, which no one is looking to sort of unpick and disrupt to any material degree at the moment. So as I said, we've been as creative as we possibly can be, and as flexible as we want to be and can be, in helping the various sports and governing bodies find new ways to reach their customers and their fans in this set of circumstances. So live streaming of games, etc., to season ticket holders. So doing what we can to do our bit to keep the narrative alive and to keep the governing bodies moving their sport forward, and the various clubs moving their sport forward. I think the question around sort of permanent rigs. Look, we are continually working with clubs about how our production is set up on site all the time. There's constant conversation about the logistics and about what technology is used and deployed and when. and also with the Premier League and the other governing bodies. So it's kind of nothing's off the table, and nothing is everything is open for discussion about how best to broadcast live football and live sport, but nothing material is going to be changing as far as I'm aware or concerned, really, in terms of how the physical setup on site and or the way in which the complicated rights contracts operate between broadcasters and governing bodies.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. I'm going to end with, because I'm conscious of the time, just one final question to all of you. I'm going to start with Sylvia. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout this entire period?
I guess it gets back to what Simon said around the agility and the agility of a business to quick plans, to quickly change plans and adapt and react. In our case, the biggest challenge was, as I said, understanding whether the events would have been cancelled or postponed, and we got to know that very close to the actual live sport event. So the ability of continuously being an agile business and supporting our partners in an agile way, it's the biggest lesson learned for us, even in the sport industry, but across all sectors, for the entity business in general, for the entity organization in general.
And thank you very much, Sylvia. Simon, is there, I mean, I guess, is there anything you would have, you know, what are the lessons you've learned? Is there anything you would have done differently, perhaps?
It's difficult to say what we would have done differently. Yeah, we certainly made lots of mistakes over the last 6 months. I've definitely learned how important face-to-face contact is with my colleagues, because I miss that desperately. I have had been up to London maybe 4 times in 6 months and had the odd meeting, and they are so important. We had one meeting that was meant to last for 2 hours. We just kept talking, socially distanced, for about 5.5 hours, because the thrill of being able to meet face to face. I've learned how important face to face is, and also crowds at sporting events. I certainly value that. We've all learned multiple different lessons.
We have, haven't we? I miss hugs personally. Rob, what would you say the biggest lessons are that you've learned? And you know, going forward, what
hugs definitely. I'm with you on the hugs. Look, I think lessons going forward. I think let me answer what I think we've learned, and I think we've learned the importance of a few things, or it's reiterated the importance of swift decision making, the importance of swift communication, the importance of technology. Again, this is in the limited world of sport. We've always learned an awful lot more as society, and just the importance of live sport to millions of people. That's, you know, when it wasn't, when there was no live sport on the channels, people were hankering for live sport, and it's back in a way that is not ideal without crowds, but nonetheless just reinforces that sport makes people feel good about things, and it is a good outlet for so many people. So to be honest, it's just reinforced to me just how important sport is to so many people.
It's our very own raison d'etre, isn't it, really? It's why we're all here and why we do what we do. Thank you so much. I want to give a big thanks to the panel today, to Rob, to Simon and Sylvia. Thank you to everyone who sent in your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get through all of them. I'm sure this panel could have gone on for another hour or two if we allowed it. Thank you to the RTS for hosting as well. There are plenty more free events on the RTS as well. So if you just go on the RTS website, and then you can book onto plenty more seminars as well. I'd just like to give personal thanks to everyone as well. Thank you for having me, and it's been wonderful to talk to you all. Wishing you a wonderful afternoon, and long live live sport. I think that's what we all I think that's what we all believe. Thank you very much, everyone.